And Sydney and Joey, you are good to go.
Thanks, Haley. Well, good morning, everybody. I know a few more are kind of trickling in here, so we'll just start with some introductions. And I wanted to, again, thank you all for coming to the NTC Tech Talk for April 21st. There's quite a few of you here with us, and I really didn't expect everybody to spend their breakfast with us, so I really do appreciate that. Well, here's a couple more just coming in here, so give us just another minute. All right. So today we're going to demonstrate how process mining drives your automation pipeline, but we wanted to first start with some introductions. So I'm Sydney Gorman. I'm an account executive for Silex. I cover the east part of Tennessee. And a fun fact about me is I'm actually a Boston native who migrated my way down here about almost 5 years ago. I'm working on becoming a little bit more of a Southern belle, but I am still happy to part with all of that snow up there in Boston. And with me, I've brought Joey.
Well, thanks, Sydney. I am Joey Neiman, the director of the RPA practice with Silex Data Solutions. My experience is over the past decade has predominantly been in healthcare and focused on automation and RPA. And that includes process mining, which is what we are going to spend quite a bit of our time on in this presentation this morning, as I think that it provides some really awesome data on your current processes and drives your automation pipeline. A fun fact about me, about a year and a half ago, I moved from Franklin to about an hour west of Nashville and moved out on a 58-acre farm, which is a big lifestyle change from living in the subdivisions. And so we've got some chickens, sheep, cows, and just really enjoying the farm life with my family.
Thanks, Joey. And there's one other that I did want to introduce, and that's Silex. So who is Silex? We're a value-added reseller, and we are founded by a group of industry veterans who saw a need to shift that discussion from infrastructure to more of a customer data strategy. So we're located just down the road in Franklin, Tennessee. We are a minority-owned company. We're a women-owned business. Primarily, our customer base is just in the Southeast, but with some of those customers, we have different data centers, and such as one of our larger customers here has data centers in Maryland, London. So our bandwidth does stretch outside of the Southeast, but primarily here. And I wanted to give you just a little bit more of an understanding of who the partners that we work with. So we put a smattering here on this page, but to break it down for you, Silex handles anything in the enterprise data center. So that could be from infrastructure to backup to security, with everything in between, such as automation, which we're here to talk a little bit more about with process mining. So we're going to look at some awesome stories today, kind of showing the benefit of process mining and how we identify use cases for your robotic process automation, which is also known as RPA. So we're going to look at a common workflow for order management, just as a use case here today. And this is going to show how process mining exposes missed revenue opportunities, revenue leakage, and finds opportunities for automation. So again, we're just going to use order management as an example here, as it's pretty universal and we have a large data set to work from. You don't have to be an expert with order management to follow this example, but note that process mining is applicable across many different verticals, such as healthcare, banking, insurance, manufacturing, just to name a couple. But one thing I do want to emphasize before we jump into it is that process mining is most effective before your automation implementation, as you get the best as-is process picture. It's important because we consistently see the approach taken where users submit what they feel should be automated. And this is typically what somebody's biggest pain point is, what keeps them up at night, but that doesn't really deliver a true ROI.
Hey, and Sid, let me jump in on that real quick, because this is something that I see all the time. I am asked, Joey, we have some automation, we have some bots in place, but we're just not really seeing, an ROI on the automation. And 9 out of 10 times, that's because the use cases that are automated, Sydney, to kind of your point, is it's from like just one person's perspective. It's their biggest pain point. It might be, every week I have to build this report that takes 15 minutes to do. And when you automate that, your ROI is based on, well, one person in 15 minutes. And so what process mining is going to do is it's going to show you the real value in processes where there's manual touch points that could be automated that will drive, an ROI. at scale that will make a significant difference for your organization.
That makes sense. Thanks, Joey. All right, so before moving forward with the presentation, I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page here. So let's start with a couple of quick definitions. So what is process mining and how does it compare to task mining? So as you can see on the screen, process mining is a tool-based approach to driving the actual process using event logs to capture key steps in a workflow. It delivers a never before seen view of the as-is process. And task mining is an installed widget on a PC that records user actions and drives the process based on the human interaction with applications.
Instead, again, let me jump in on that real quick, because I think oftentimes these terms are used synonymously, and they're actually very different. Task mining, think of this as you got a widget that's running on someone's workstation. Typically, you would run those for 14 days, maybe 21 days at the most. And you're capturing all of the steps of an actual user, how they're navigating across multiple applications. The con to task mining is that you're only capturing data in those tasks, on a 2 to 3 week period. So if there's any anomalies, someone's out on vacation or something like that, and that user is having to take on additional workload, you're not really capturing, the normal day-to-day, of that user. And that's where process mining, I think, has the biggest advantage, is that we're taking event logs from the system, so we can look at weeks, months, years, several years worth of data. And the sample that we're going to look at today, there's millions of transactions, and so it allows us to really drive the big picture of what that process looks like.
Thanks, Joey. All right, and we've just got a couple more definitions for you to make sure that we are all on the same page. So for happy path, this is the most efficient and effective route from an initial input to the final input. We also have the quantified process steps. This is the previously never before seen view of your existing process. This is the game changer, and this is what we're going to focus on today. And we also have the automation pipeline, which this pipeline drives meaningful and impactful use cases based on ROI. So now that we've got our definitions, we're all on the same page. Joey, I just want to jump in and ask, which systems do we target and how heavy is the lift to run process mining?
Well, thanks, Sydney. So the systems that are good candidates for process mining is your SAPs, your Oracles. Your SAPs could be several modules, right? The financial controlling, the M&M materials management, sales distribution, and quality management. All of those have event logs that work well for process mining. And then you also includes your major EHR systems in the healthcare space, your Cerner, your Epic, and Salesforce and Workday. But really, any application that has an event log is a good candidate for process mining. The information that we need on an event log is pretty minimal, to be quite honest. I'm looking for a timestamp, an event name, who completed that event, and like a unique transaction ID. So if we're looking at an invoice, right, I'll follow that invoice ID throughout the entire process and capture all of the tasks and events that were associated with that life cycle of that invoice. And so with that, the turnaround time is pretty minimal. From a typical, BA standpoint, sitting in a conference room with SMEs and process owners, it could take weeks, maybe even months, to drive a process. And since we're taking a tool-based approach, less than 7 days is a turnaround time to see what you are going to experience in the demo today.
Wow, that's pretty quick. So once the logs are loaded, what insights can you see?
So we can look at KPIs, and I call these process KPIs. They're process-based versus productivity-based, which is more of your traditional KPIs. We're able to look at some insights around, manual touches, right? We're all implementing, electronic systems, trying to reduce the amount of manual work across our processes. And with process mining, you can see, who and what is still being completed with manual processes today. You'll also expose lost revenue opportunities. With the order management that we're seeing that we're going to demo today, you're going to see missed orders is a big issue, and the revenue impact that drives. Revenue leakage, too many manual touches, right? So process holding up progress, and that's one that we all love when we see that. And then deviations from the happy path, which you defined just a couple minutes for us. And then the automation ROI. And this is a big one because we can quantify the manual impact, and that will allow us to put the ROI around the automation and ensure that we're looking at the appropriate use cases for like our RPA programs.
Okay. Well, now that we have a baseline understanding and we've talked about it a little bit, can you show us what it looks like?
I sure can. Give me 1 second to change screens.
We're all familiar with it in this virtual world that we live in now. And we have a few more who have come in since we started. So our deck is being recorded and it'll be handed out at the end of the call. So if you had missed the first half, we're happy to send that out and you can catch up. And if you have any questions based on that, we'll have some time at the end for question and answers. And if we don't get to any of your questions, we'll have our contact information. So feel free to reach out with anything.
All right, thank you, Sid. All right, so process mining. And again, this is a tool-based approach driven off your event logs that you're currently capturing today in your systems. And again, it's minimal information. And of course, the more data that we have in the event logs, the more details that you're able to kind of analyze with your process mining. So as Sydney had mentioned, we're looking at the order management workflow. And that's because everyone kind of has a good idea of how order management works, right? You have a sales order that comes in, there's a delivery, and then you ship the items, then you get confirmation of the shipment, and then you invoice the customer, and then the customer pays. It's kind of an oversimplified view, but it kind of everyone has an idea of what that looks like. And so what we're looking at here is the executive dashboard. And when we talked about a large data set, we're looking at 1.3 million sales order items in this data set for this demo, which has a net order value of 3 billion. And that might be more than some of the customers or individuals and the companies that are on today's call. But you're going to be able to see a lot of differences and variations around these processes that I'm sure that we all experience on a daily basis. So 2 areas that we want to focus on is customer satisfaction and labor productivity. And so OTIF stands for on time in full, and you're going to see that acronym quite a bit throughout this presentation. But think of OTIF as you order something on Amazon, you order 5 items on Amazon, and Amazon says those 5 items will arrive tomorrow. And when tomorrow comes, all 5 of your items show up. So in this case, we're looking in this data set. You can see that our OTIF rate is 70%, and the best in class is 90. The target for this customer is 85%. And again, we're at 70%. And if you look at the graph on the bottom, we are trending the wrong direction. And then the other item that we're looking at is labor productivity. And this is wasted internal cost. Best in class is 0.5 touches per sales order that comes in the door. And our target is 2.5. But the reality is we're at 3.1. And again, we are trending in the wrong direction. So process mining is going to give us the details on what is going on with our processes today that is driving these poor performance numbers. So we'll look at the supply chain. This is just some additional information that's driven off the data. And again, this is a very large volume. And so just again, based off the data, we see that we have two factories, 4 local offices, 4 distribution hubs, and then 7 local offices. And so with the data, you can look at which office is performing better than others. You could drill down into the processes and see what's the variation between the two. And of course, take that and be able to do process optimization based on those other offices within your organization. So this is where the magic happens right here. And this is the Process Explorer. And this is going to show you the view of your processes. And again, we've had no conversations with any of the process owners, any SMEs, or anyone involved in order management. This is strictly driven off the data from your event logs. And so, as Sid had mentioned, this is the happy path. And this is the shortest process to complete the workflow. And so you can see here the happy path is we create the sales order, we generate the delivery documentation, we release that delivery, we ship the goods, we send the invoice, we get confirmation of the delivery, and then the invoice is cleared, paid by the customer. And in the order management, like this is the workflow that everyone is striving for. And when you are sitting in a room trying to kind of diagram your process, do that the historical like Visio type charts, this is what you are typically this is kind of the best graph that you can come up with. But at the same time, we all know that that's not reality. There's going to be deviations to the process and variations to the happy path. And so we can see here that the number one deviation from the happy path, and it will pop up here in a second, is the delivery date has passed. And so out of 1.3 million items that came through, 366 of those are delivered late to the customer. And again, that's 30%. That's driving our OTIF rate way below the KPI and the targets that we have set. And so, again, this is where the magic happens. You can see that, from that happy path. Let me go ahead and expand this out. And this will take a second to load again as it's processing a lot of data. But you can see each one of these tasks are quantified. And this is the reality of the process. We think of our processes as that term, the happy path. But here's all of the variations that occur. We have, we're changing payment terms 636 times. We've canceled 11,356 orders. We've changed the price on our items 256,000 times from the sales orders that we have processed. We have changed shipping conditions 172,000 times. And this is the game changer with process mining, because not only are we getting the view of here's our process today, but we've quantified the number of times that each one of these variations have occurred from our target process, the happy path. And now we have an opportunity that we can say, okay, this piece right here is manual. And if we automate this, we know that on average it takes this takes a user 10 minutes to modify a price change. And if that is happening 256,000 times, now we're able to calculate the ROI for automation. And this is what is going to drive your automation pipeline and give your organization a much better benefit versus just kind of polling users and getting that single point of view. This is going to allow you to identify those processes that actually have a huge impact on your organization.
So Joey, that looks like a lot of deviations for a relatively simple process. But I think what would be more important is if we could see what the impact would be for each of these deviations. Can process mining show us something like that?
Process mining does. So let's look at the customer satisfaction. And again, our OTIF rate is 70%. And we're looking at a potential benefit. If we beat our targets on this, this is a $15 million potential benefit to the organization. And these are for items that are already coming in. This isn't going out and seeking new customers, you're trying to generate new sales. This is for sales orders that are already coming in the door. And so again, if we look at the number one deviation from the happy path. The delivery date has passed. And so where process mining and the additional details that process mining is going to deliver from the event logs is our top inefficiency is delivery blocks. So let's expand on that, because this has an impact of $6.5 million alone to the organization. And this is 6.5 of the 15 million potential benefit. So $340 million is tied up in late deliveries to customers. And you can see right here, the root cause is a large order volume. And that means that, let's say a customer ordered 10 items and we have 8 in stock. Well, we're holding the entire order because we can't fulfill the entire request. And so one of the recommendations here would be, if it's applicable to the customer, go ahead and ship the 8. And when the other 2 items come in stock, then you can ship those additional 2. You can also see here that this discount penalty, this 5.5% number, is actually really, really, really important. Because what this is showing us is when we deliver late, we're discounting our items or crediting in invoices on an average of 5.5%. And what that means to the organization is, at this point, you are purchasing customer satisfaction, because your performance was subpar, didn't meet the standards. You're obviously not meeting your internal targets. So you're offering discounts and credits to customers to purchase customer satisfaction. And that might work for 1 or 2 late deliveries, but at some point you're discounting, you're crediting the customer, and they're going to go somewhere else to fulfill their requirements because you just consistently 30% of the time you're delivering late. Does that answer your question on that, Sid?
Yeah, it does. Thank you, Joey. It's a pretty big impact. So I don't know how anyone does business without understanding this blocker and the impact that it has.
Yep. So let's take a look at the next inefficiency that process mining has found for us. And this is credit blocks. And again, because we're delivering late, credit blocks is a significant driver. We have the 5.5% discount penalties that we're offering on items and invoices. And so these credit blocks are driven by, you can see right here on the bars on the left, that 61,000 of these items, it takes 1 to 3 days to get through the process. That's driving the delivery delay. And we have 55,000, that's 4 to 6 delay impact on the delivery date. And so this is obviously making sure that the customer is credit worthiness to pay the invoice. And so looking at some items here, and so we have the first item. Let's look at Palacio here. 31,000 times they have been blocked for unnecessarily for the credit block. But they have an approval rate of 98%, and they pay on time 90%. So, process mining exposes this type of information, and it kind of drives the obvious question. Why Palacio is a customer of ours? Why are we holding 31,000 of their sales orders when 98% of the time they're automatically approved and 90% of the time they pay on time? And another one that is very interesting to look at is this Factory West. 99% approval rate, and we've held 10,000 of their sales orders, which is resulting in these late deliveries. So recommendation on this is from an automation standpoint. If a approval rate is above 90% with a paid on time rate of 80%, you can auto approve the customer and remove this delivery block. And with that, you will see the significant days of reduction for your delivery and the impact that that's going to have on your OTIF numbers. So that's really cool information that you're getting, again, from process mining. So the next item that we can look at here is the labor productivity. And you can see the happy path right here. And so again, this is 3.1 touches, manual touches per sales order. Best in class, again, was 5%. Company's target is 2.5%, and we were trending significantly in the wrong direction, which means that over time, we're going to continue to increase touches, which means that we're going to continue to pay more money and reduce our margins for every sales order that comes in the door. And so our top inefficiency that's determined by process mining is this manual sales order creation. So let's expand on that. All right, so you can see here 950,000 sales orders. We have a manual rate of 73% of these sales orders that come through are being manually touched. And that is significant because what we're looking at here based on the average time for the manual interaction with a sales order is it's costing the organization $8.30. Which gives us an opportunity savings of $5.73 million to drive revenue back into the organization that, again, these sales orders are already coming through the door. And so there's a significant opportunity here. And this is an interesting view because like I mentioned earlier, we've all are constantly trying to drive automation, make processes more efficient. On the IT side, right, we're continuously deploying tools and providing resources to streamline our processes. And so right here with process mining, this is allowing us to see who is the big offender in the manual process. So it allows you to kind of target, and maybe it's a training issue, maybe it's a setup or configuration issue, but without process mining, you would never have like this type of view and be able to understand that yes, I know that we have some individuals who are doing mainly touching these sales orders. It might be happening a little bit more than we like, but here you can put hard numbers to that. And 950,000 times 73% at $8.30. Fixing this, putting the right automation in place, has a ROI for your like your RPA program of $5.7 million, and that is significant. So the other thing that we can look at here is what else is driving the excessive manual touches, and that is these manual price changes. And this is interesting because we see this all the time. I mean, and even outside of just order management, even in the healthcare space, providers request orders, maybe it's medication orders, and the pharmacies continuously having to go back and change those. And people just kind of accept that as the norm. And it's kind of what you see in this example right here. So 340,000 times a price change was completed on a sales order. And the effort to make that change is 10 minutes. And so this has a $250,000 impact on the organization. And you can see right here, the number one root cause is a dummy price. And so if we look right here at the CNC 100, which in this case, this is like a wire connector, these invoices are printing out at 1 cent. That's the dummy price. 51,000 times that is changed to $15.34. That can be a simple fix by updating your master pricing table. But instead, we're seeing here that this just continuously is automatically generated at 1 cent, and we're having to go in and again, 51,000 times we have modified that price to $15.34. The other one that is interesting here is this Turner X300 that we've discovered through process mining. And again, the old price is 1 cent, and 15,000 times This has changed to $30.23. And this is just straight revenue leakage. Like there's no other way to explain that. This is, easily fixed. You can set up, bots to recognize these opportunities and make those changes with a whole approval process and everything. But again, process mining is quantifying, and this is the game changer that process mining is giving you around your processes. Is it's quantifying that not only do I know that I might have some annual price changes, and that's something that we need to look into, but invoices are going out and customers are paying. No, this is showing you that you have significant revenue leakage because there's so many manual touches at 10 minutes per touch. We're impacting the organization by $250,000.
Hey, Joey, can I jump in for just a second? Since it's happening so often, I know that you said bots could help automate the process, but would process mining help you to identify how the solution or what the solution should be?
Sure can. So here's what a automated solution could look like for this type of process. Right. So you would set up like a trigger to automatically detect that price change. Again, going from 1 cent to $30. And you would set the logic in your automation that says, is this price change consistent? And you would set that threshold. And that first example for that CNC 100 item, 51,000 times it's changed consistently to $15.34. Yeah, that is that would be well above my threshold to say, let's go ahead and update, using automation, let's update the master data. And then we will create an alert to inform the order manager that the bot has updated the pricing table based on the volume of pricing changes and the consistency that delivers. And then if you get a pricing change that, let's say it is not as consistent, you can still have the automation around that to, you can send a message to the order manager to review that sales order. And hey, we've got a significant price change, but it's not as consistent. Maybe there's 3 or 4 different prices that are being used. And so your automation, you don't want that to, arbitrarily, set one of those prices in the pricing table. So you send that to the order manager and you can create the task for your order manager to review. And from that point, your order manager can, approve. And when they approve, then you kick off the update the master data and then inform them that it's complete. And then if it is denied, well, then you would send that, back to the bot. So the next time that there's a price change for that order, you're not going to go back and, bug your order manager again. So that's a really good example of how, automation in this place is going to reduce the amount of manual touches for those dummy prices, which again has a significant impact on the revenue.
It does. So are you able to show us, if we do implement those changes, what the realized gain could be?
I can. And let me show you a really interesting view right here that process mining gives. And I would expect someone that has like an Oracle system, SAP system around their order management, they probably have some really good views around kind of, understanding, where items are in their process. But this is really interesting because from a process mining standpoint, with all of the data that we have collected, we can make predictions. And so right here in this table on the bottom, you can see the on-time delivery prediction. And this is based on, I have 3,573 open orders with 768 of these already being blocked. 559 are delayed, and I have 203 with additional tasks. And so this is more of your like real-time view that process mining delivers. And so I can look at these items and be like, man, these are already predicted to be late. And so we could take a proactive approach. So you can see right here, this first one, this V536588 item, it's not late yet. It's predicted to be late, but we still have 2 days. So let's get someone to look at that and see if there's any way possible to get this out the door and delivered on time to the customer. So we don't have to give up a 5.5% discount or credit because we couldn't fulfill the order. And then you can see right here, we have some that are sitting out here already 10 days late, they're already 12 days late. And so this allows you, again, to be proactive in kind of resolving your issues, getting rid of those blockers to deliver your items to your customer on time. And so let's look at that credit block removed that we had talked about earlier. So we have 396 that were affected by that credit block. And by following the recommendation of a 90% approval rate with a 80% on-time payment. So if we go ahead and auto approve those, that's 396 that now kind of fell through that automated process. And look at this. This saved 3,564 minutes from our process.
Oh, Joey, that's almost 3 full days.
That is. And that is just looking at, again, you're not going to see that view without process mining. And that is just one small piece to the inefficiencies that process mining showed us that is great opportunities for automation. And that is the value that process mining delivers.
I appreciate you walking us through that, Joey, and for not only talking us through it, but showing us what it looks like. And some of those numbers are staggering. And frankly, I'm not sure how businesses stay efficient without process mining. But if they don't have it, what are the first steps in identifying some good use cases for automation?
Yep, and give me 1 second to go back. Let me share a different screen. Yep. So how does process mining and how does that tie back to your RPA programs and your automation initiatives? And you can see that that is very detailed processes and these process maps that, again, you're not going to get all of that information, sitting in conference rooms and whiteboarding and trying to build Visio charts. And so, kind of following your RPA workflow, from the documentation standpoint, that PDD is that first document. That is your as-is process. And a lot of times, from my experience, that is a long pole in the tent because you're trying to understand, hey, we've got a use case. What are the steps that are involved? Where does this fit into the overall process? Are we trying to automate the entire process? Are we trying to automate a piece of the process? And what's the value we're going to get out of it, right? All of that is what you're trying to encapsulate in the process definition document. And you can see right here that process mining, it practically wrote that document for you. So a couple days to do the process mining, and a couple days, you have your PDD document, which is going to allow you to expedite your automation because you've seen the real view around that document, or around that process. And the next piece is that solution design document, which is the next, kind of the step in a RPA implementation. And this provides your RPA and your development. Now they have the truth to what this process looks like. And I don't know how many times I've sat with process owners, and you could even ask the question, well, is there ever a time that a price change comes in and we have to manually touch those invoices? Well, the response is going to be, well, sometimes it doesn't happen very often, but yeah, you don't need to worry about that. And so, again, from process mining, that showed us that was a big deviation or variation in the process. But without process mining, I'm getting someone's point of view, like someone's assumption, how much it's occurring. And based on that response, I don't think I would necessarily pull that use case into automation. And you can see from process mining and the data-driven approach that it is a significant opportunity to drive automation. So this is providing call it quote unquote the truth to the processes, and this drives the baseline to measure your success. So I can see that 3.1 manual touches. Well, we fix the manual price changes. Now we're at maybe we're at 1.5%. manual touches. And now we're better than our predicted target, and we're no longer leaking revenue in that particular step. And the next item that is rarely spoke about is testing. I see time and time again that test cases are just kind of written around that happy path. And it's no fault of the, the test writer or the BA, because that's all the information that they have. But when you saw the, that spaghetti bowl around, the as is process and what that process looks like today, that's going to give you much better insights to write test cases that's going to challenge the automation. If the manual price changes, those credit blockers, those are opportunities that you're looking for to implement with your automation. As well as, you can, apply those additional steps to your testing and, ensure that you're adding, this next part, resiliency, to your bots. And this resiliency, again, I see time and time again, and there is a balance here between, that minimal to market versus, actually delivering automation. And you can see here, if we were automating the happy path, we're leaving significant automation opportunities, on the table. And so, this allows you to implement more than just the happy path. We can automate the happy path plus the automation for the credit blockers, plus the automation for those manual price changes. And now we actually have, real ROI to the organization. Not only were we able to calculate that based on the quantification of the process mining for each one of those, but now we have, the data to support, like, hey, why we're going beyond just the happy path, and these are going to deliver significant impacts to the organization. And that is how you drive real automation into your, RPA programs. And so with that, I wanted to open it up for questions.
All right, if anybody has any questions, feel free to submit them in the Q&A box. Joey, we did get some throughout the presentation. So I'm gonna answer or submit those to you. We have got quite a few throughout the presentation, but feel free to continue to submit them. If we don't get to everybody's questions, again, we will have our contact information at the end of the presentation. Feel free to reach out to us after the presentation. We're happy to answer any and all questions. And again, this was a lot of information to digest. So if you have the questions come up later at the end of the day or tomorrow, again, feel free to reach out. All right, Joey. So can you tell us again what is needed in an event log to start process mining? Was one question.
Sure can. And again, it's 4 key areas, or I should say 4 key data elements that we're looking for. And the more information and the more details, allows us to identify, not just that there's, for example, like a manual price change, but what is the item that was, manually touched? What was the starting price? What was the end price? And that really helps us provide additional, insights. But at its core, the data elements is, a timestamp. So it allows us to, track the sequence of events, how much time it's taking between each one of those. And that allows us to get into some of those like predictions, like the example here that items will be delivered late, because we're able to look at averages across, other items. The second one is I need an event, either like a category or like an event name that is telling us like, this is a sales order that is generated. And if you're using one of those systems that I had showed on a previous slide, we already have all that information. Those are logs that we see, all the time. I just need that event name. The third item is who's completing the event, whether it's system driven or whether it's a person, which obviously indicates that there's a manual component to that. And then the last piece is a unique transaction ID. And like I had mentioned before, a really good example of that is going to be like an invoice ID. As that invoice moves through its life cycle, process mining is following that invoice ID throughout that process, which helps us understand here's the happy path. And then, again, it reveals the deviations, from that happy path with all those, process variations that, you saw like that spaghetti bowl.
All right, thank you. And another question that came in is process mining just a one-time data pull?
Process mining does not have to be a one-time data pull. Oftentimes, people will look at it as a one-time data pull, but especially after you implement your automation, it's always really cool to see the benefit. And so you can pull that data again, load that in your process mining, and again, since you've established that baseline, now you can kind of have your before and after view and ensure that you have met your automation targets based on those ROIs. And that's always a great way to kind of demonstrate your wins. And it's really difficult to demonstrate your wins if you don't really understand the ROI going into it. But if I'm looking at, hey, this manual component is happening 250,000 times at 10 minutes, and now we reduce 95% of those, and we've there's value there. There's a story there that oftentimes is missed because you don't have the baseline, you don't have the information, and you don't really have an ROI. Because you're kind of focused on, we see it time and time again, going back to the previous slides, where, kind of that, polling the citizens, for your automation use cases.
All right, and another one just came in as well in the chat window. Randy's asking if process mining applications often take a lot of work when gathering data from multiple data sources. So what are you seeing for average time to establish the mining activities? Is it hours, days, weeks?
A great question, Randy. And it's typically less than 7 days. I kind of, allow, a good week to ingest the data, kind of interpret the data. Pulling data from multiple sources is certainly not an issue for process mining. I think the only additional step that you have is when we're talking about like those event names, we want to kind of do some mapping across those. So we are consistently, if I'm looking at some, order workflow that might span 2 systems, and maybe there's, price changing, for example, happening in both systems, I want to be able to take those events on those logs and kind of map those together. So we're looking at, one like longitudinal view of that process. So that's really the only difference between looking at it more from a single system and a multi-system process.
Randy, I hope that answers your question. Let us know if you need a follow-up there. And apologies, the Q&A session is anonymous, so I'm not sure. Let us know if anybody else needs any follow-up to these questions. But a couple more. In shipping, are we identifying inside, outside shipping carriers that are delaying shipments? Oh, I think that might be outside of the scope, Joey.
Well, so not necessarily, I can answer that question. That's going to come down to the details that is on the event log. And so in those details, if I'm looking at, hey, here's a delivery block because it is, an item that is late arriving to us. If I have those details, then process mining will, you can drill down to, here's the items that are consistently being delivered late. Here's the customers that are consistently being late. And if there's carriers involved and I have the information in the log, we can certainly track that. I didn't have that on the information, on the presentation today, but again, if the information's there, it can certainly be mined to provide those insights. Okay.
And another question, we have a homegrown payroll system. Can we still leverage process mining?
I get those type of questions a lot around homegrown systems or like, internal development. And, the answer is, if there's an event log that's being created, then yes, that is a candidate or a target for process mining. And that's kind of the beauty of process mining is, and again, the more details, the bigger picture we have. But really, like I've mentioned, it comes down to those 4 components. And as long as we have those 4 components, we can show some really good insights. And process mining, delivers those insights into those processes.
All right. And another one that came in for the process views, how nicely can they be filtered? For example, if I wanted to see data on before and after an automation improvement to show ROI.
Yep. So those dashboards are 100% customizable, and we can query against those results to put whatever view you would like to see around an insight. And so, yeah, before afters are very common. And we look at that, kind of from two different data pools, and then we can create, a single dashboard that, is querying, both of those and driving those results. And, again, like those are super awesome to see because, that shows the value of your automation. And, that's, those show your big wins for your RPA teams and, your teams who are, tasked or focused on, automation initiatives. So those always tell, really good stories.
All right. And another one is process mining just a one-time data pull?
It doesn't have to be. And oftentimes I think that it's best to look at it as not a one-time data pull, especially if you are, intend on improving the processes and using automation. That, kind of to that previous question with the before and after view, you can kind of do that A/B comparison and say, here's where we were at historically. We've implemented this automation and over the past 30 days, and we can filter down to just those 30 days. Here's what those processes look like. So then you're looking at those process maps, you're looking at those inefficiencies and those deviations and calculating your value add to the process.
Thanks, Joey. Another one, going back to kind of the beginning of the presentation, happy path is a new term for me. Can you please explain that again?
Yes, the happy path. I mean, I love that term because that is it's been around the development world for a long time, and that's kind of it's typically been kind of like your amenable to market. Like we're just going to the easiest piece that we're going to implement. But from a process standpoint, I think that there's definitely a more solid definition to that. And like you had shown earlier, that is your fewest number of steps to complete the workflow from the input, from the initial input to the final output. And so, kind of going through that, order management, that happy path, it's like, that's the invoice coming in. There's no deviations, there's no additional decisions. And, it's kind of that process that everything is based around. And so you got the invoice coming in. You have the procurement of those items. You ship those items, you get confirmation, you send an invoice, and then the invoice is paid. And so all the automation and everything that we look at should be kind of baselined against that, against the happy path. And that's going to identify the inefficiencies. And then again, quantifying each one of those events is going to allow us to calculate the ROI for implementing the automation for those variations of the happy path. Does that answer the question?
I hope so. Again, let us know if anybody needs a follow-up to some of these questions. Okay, moving right along. I know that we're coming up at the top of the hour here, so just a couple more questions. If we have already implemented changes, can you see the before and the after view of process mining?
That is a great question, and we can. Due to the abilities and the the timestamps on each one of those records that we capture on the event logs, we could put those filters in place, and that will give you the view. We can say if you implemented those changes 90 days ago, we could run a before view up to that point where it was implemented, and then we can look at a view that is just the last 90 days, and again, that gives you that A/B comparison.
Okay, great. And I think we only have time for about one more. So again, if we missed your question, feel free to submit them after the call. But Joey,
and I'm going to go ahead and pull up our contact information because I am more than happy to answer additional questions outside this tech talk. And you can go ahead with your questions, Sid.
Okay. Do you recommend an organization start process mining with a specific process or cast a wider net to find process inefficiencies?
That is a really good question, whoever asked that one. And I think that you have to look at kind of what's going on in the organization. Are there specific areas where everyone kind of already understands that there's some issues and you have some initiatives to kind of focus on those known problem areas? Or if you're just trying to see like what are other automation opportunities or process improvements that we should look at. And so I know that's kind of a vague answer, but it is going to kind of depend on the organization. Process mining is certainly capable of both. So my approach typically is let's cast a wider net. Let's look at multiple processes and get an idea of maybe where again, from a data-driven result, but where could we be experiencing the most leakage, or where would the most automation opportunities live? And then from there, that's when we kind of single out that vertical or that process and really dig into the details and quantify those revenue leakage and start really looking at the ROI. So I think the answer to that is both, but that's what makes process mining super awesome. Is it gives you that flexibility.
All right. Thanks, Joey. And again, if anybody has any questions last minute, go ahead and submit them to us after the event closes. On the screen, you can see that you have both my contact information as well as Joey's. Again, I'm Sydney Gorman. I'm an account executive, and we have Joey, who's the director of our RPA practice. I believe that everybody got their breakfast voucher earlier this week when you registered. If you did not get it or had any questions on that, feel free to reach out to us after the meeting as well, and we'll make sure to get that to you. Again, really appreciate everybody joining us for an early morning Thursday meeting. It's rainy and cloudy here in Nashville, so hoping the weekend brightens up for everybody. But this was a lot of information, so really appreciate everybody joining. It might be brand new to others, and some people might have been using it for years. So happy to answer any questions and kind of dive into the art of the possible if that's of interest. Joey, any closing remarks from your side?
No, I certainly appreciate everyone. If you can't tell, I'm really passionate about process mining because I see the value that drives, and it driving your automation pipelines, and it ensures that you're focusing on real value add to your organization.
Well, thanks everybody for joining us this morning, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks everybody. Thanks, Haley.